You guys know about like the four walls, like in acting? Y'all hear that phrase? Like the fourth wall, the third wall. Did you know there's a first and a second wall in acting and like movie making and all this kind of stuff? I'm going to read this real quick so it'll give me a little context for what I'm saying. The first wall between the individual actor and the actor's self as an instrument. This is a relationship full of paradox and so difficult to solve without falling into either self-doubt or narcissism. Okay, so that's the first wall between the individual actor and the actor self as an instrument. The second is the wall between the actor and the material, the character and the text. So it's like between the actor and whatever they're doing. Then you have the third wall, which refers to when a character, like in a show, addresses the fact that they're like in a show. You know what I'm saying? Like The Office is an example of that. You know, it's like we're watching these people and then all of a sudden they're like doing interviews. Like they know that they're being filmed, right? And then the fourth wall is when they either explicitly or implicitly not only acknowledge that they're like in a show, but they like talk to the people who are watching the show. So if you go to a play or something, I hate to say Kevin Spacey, he did this, he's kind of a rat, but like he was like once doing a play on Broadway, and someone's phone kept on ringing, and he was like, pulled out his phone, and he's like, well, it's not mine, and then put it back in and just kept on acting. And so it's like an example of breaking the fourth wall. He was just, mad, I guess. So those are the four walls, and I think I read those because I want to talk about a version of that for evangelists, okay? So what I want to talk about, and this is instructive. This isn't meant to be entertaining or all that educational. It's meant more to be maybe corrective, but maybe more sort of like, oh, okay, that will help me. I'm saying this stuff because I want to help you. I have to say this sort of thing to myself all the time, these sorts of things to myself. And that is like, I want to tell you four things. They're not exactly like those four walls, but interestingly enough, they do kind of line up. And I want to tell you, these are four things, and really for most people in the room, three of these things are things that you should absolutely be thinking about every time that you are talking to somebody about the abolition of abortion, the gospel of Jesus Christ. If you are engaging some other person, you need to be thinking about these three things. And really in this order, okay? I think actually people flip the order, which I'll explain at the end. First thing you need to be thinking about, and the reason we're doing this now is because we're about to go to a college campus and we're about to talk to a lot of college kids and have lots of conversations, okay? You'll hear when we go over the rules, our preferred method of engaging the culture is actual lots of conversations. If you're just one guy on a college campus, you may need to use a bullhorn because you're one guy. Now, if you're 300 people on a college campus, you are the bullhorn, and you're going to get into lots of conversations. So that's what we want to see. We want to see lots of conversations, but with the caveat, we want those conversations to be good, okay? And, well, when we get to the third and fourth walls, you'll know why. First wall, first thing you need to be thinking about is not this narcissistic relationship between like you, yourself, and your craft or whatever, the first wall. It's God. You have to be actually thinking about God when you're talking to a person. First and foremost, you're thinking, God's helping me. Use the words. You're not just saying that. Everyone says that, but you need to be thinking that. And it needs to make you patient and chill and listen and be okay. You're praying, you're thinking about God, you're talking to God, you're asking the Lord to give you scripture, to give you wisdom, to give you a chill demeanor, whatever it is, but you're thinking primarily, first and foremost, about God, knowing that actually God is 1,000 times more interested in evangelizing that person than you are. For whatever reason, in his infinite wisdom, he decided to let you be the person that does it. But if you will yield to the Spirit of God, he can use you. Don't always see a yielding to the Spirit of God. But you're thinking about God. You're thinking about, one, him helping you. Secondly, maybe not 1 and 2, but just 1 and 1. You're thinking, I don't want to do anything that would bring shame to the name and glory of God. So whatever's going on, that's what you're thinking about. God help me, and so help me God. Like, I don't want to besmirch your name or your people or your gospel. So that's the first thing. You're thinking about God. And if really you go out on the campus and you just sit there and you focus and you pray, you'll see crazy, amazing things happen. I don't want to make promises about miracles, but I think people who go to campuses and just go out there and they're like just really focused on following Christ, good things happen. I think people, when they don't focus on that, they go on campus and sometimes nothing happens. And they wonder why. Because they went there in their own strength. And God doesn't want to use anyone in their own strength, because that's dangerous, because your strength it's pretty weak. All right, secondly, you want to think about the actual person that you're talking to. Now, it seems weird to think more about God than the person you're talking to. That seems a little, so make these 1 and 2 very close. The person you're talking to is made in the image of God, all right? And they're your neighbor, and they're someone that you should love, even if they're totally different and you disagree with them about a lot of things. You need to talk to them as your neighbor and as a fellow person, as somebody, but for the grace of God, you would be exactly like. And if you think about that person that way, you're going to treat them the way that you would want to be treated, even if you were lost. Now, you know now that if you're lost, you would treat them in a certain way that, like, I know that when I've sinned, I've responded better when someone's been serious with me about it, right? Like, whenever I've sinned, my wife has never been like, well, you're human, She's been like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't know, and I'm just like, I'm messed up, But, so there is a place to be, like, so you will see, if you see me talking to people, I will often say, hey, I'm shooting straight with you, and I'm telling you this because I love you, but yes, God hates your hands, God hates what you do. God hates who you identify as. You identify as a murderer proudly. God hates that. So tell people the truth, but try to tell that to that person in such a way that you are reaching them, right? And the reason I say that this is the second person and it's close to the first person when you're talking to is you need to, and this is a transition to 3, you need to think about the person you're talking to so much more than you're thinking about the Christian standing next to you, right? This is where there's a problem. So 1 and 2, very much over here. God, that person. One last thing on the person, listen to what they're saying. Now, sometimes they're just red herrings, and you don't have to answer every objection, and you're thinking, why are they saying this? Maybe they asked me this question, and I'm going to answer it with this answer, and that's not actually rude, because you're like figuring out what they're really saying. They want you to take a red herring, but you should be able to diagnose, oh, they're trying to distract. This person wants me to talk about complex specified information in the DNA molecule, so I get stuck in this design debate forever because they're like a bio major. They don't want me to talk about their homosexuality. So they ask me about, like, Archaeopteryx, right? Like, they came up to me and they told me they hate God and that they're going to get their boyfriend out there to kiss him in front of me. And then they go, what about Archaeopteryx? Or, some hominid fossil or something. It's your homosexuality. You love your sin, you hate God because you get to do unrighteous things and call it good. So if they're red herring you don't have to follow everything and get into all these weird debates. You can look at them and go straight to, because that's you thinking about them as a person and trying to figure out what they need when they need it. You understand? But the only way you can do this is if you are actually listening to them, looking at them, thinking about them, trying to read their face, trying to understand what's going on. You're not going to be always perfect at it. If you were like me and you were a reprobate and you played Texas Hold'em all through college, you've got a leg up on everybody. You just see all the tails. Someone's like, ooh, Hold'em. No, we're not. Yeah. Resist and then flee from you. So God, that person, and you need to be honest. Like, I think the need to be honest with that person happens, and you all of a sudden can admit when you don't know something, or when you need to think about something, or when you haven't. When you think about that person as a person, you don't think about them as a trophy. So whenever they ask you a question you legitimately don't know or whatever, you don't lie and make things up. But you do whenever you're thinking about the third person, which even though they're right here and they're right with you and they're sitting right here with you, this is a big problem. Christians, when we go out and we do evangelism, sometimes you know what you're thinking about most? You're saved by grace, but you're still not fully sanctified, just like me. And you're talking to a lost person, you're thinking primarily about the Christian sitting next to you and how they're hearing you and whether you're doing it right and whether you check off all the boxes. Now, if you're the person sitting next to someone and you're like, oh, you said atonement, but you didn't say penal substitution. You have other issues that are the subject of other lectures. But there is a critical spirit that is, I mean, the Bible talks about it, that kind, sort of quarrelsome, critical person who's sort of like, even in a group like this where you got radical Christians who come from 1,800 miles away to like rebuke some city for the sin of abortion, there's like people in that group that are always like, I don't know if you're doing it good enough, you know? And it's like, well, I'm only sleeping 3 hours a day. I'm trying, you know? But that is a person, but you don't need to. Sometimes we kowtow to that person, and you shouldn't. Sometimes you have to tell that person, it's like, listen, I agree that I could have done better, but I'm thinking about them, and this is as far as I got with that person, and I'm leaving it to the providence of God for someone else to take them further. And that's okay. It's really okay. Sometimes you're like, well, in a book of the Bible, there might be chapters before you get to the gospel. There might be chapters before you get to grace. Well, that doesn't mean we rip out all those pages thinking that someone maybe just read one, you know. Sometimes you only get a few pages in with somebody, and somebody else comes along. Sometimes you'll be the only one who gives them the justice of God, and somebody comes along and gives them the mercy or the grace. So the children are all signaling to me, you got 6 minutes, bub. So thirdly, you think about that Christian that's with you. You can think about them, but this is the only way you need to be thinking about them. Never think about them as people you're trying to impress. You already thought about the person you're trying to impress. That was one. That was God. Never think about that other Christian in the sense of, I'm trying to impress. But you can think about that other Christian as, I'm trying to help this person know how to do this thing better. Okay? That makes sense? I'm not trying to impress this person and gain their praise or their admiration, but they may be standing here because they want to know how to do this better. And so I'm thinking, while I'm talking, in the middle of this thing, while someone's throwing a Coke at me, and somebody's, doing this and doing that, and I don't know if you guys know, but I have an official dancer that dances around with me. Yes, and it's like I have my own Karen, and so I'm thinking about very little about that, but then I'm thinking about this here with the person. But sometimes I'm thinking, probably the people that I go with, they're like, man, you're never thinking about that, But like sometimes I'm thinking about the other person with me and thinking, what I might need to say to them later why I said what I said. Like I may need to do that. Like, hey, I said this thing to this person. You thought I should go this direction. I did it. Well, I went this direction because I felt like it needed, So I do think about that person, all right, the other Christian that's watching. But if you have a problem with I think a lot of us, I think this is like a Christian leader thing. It's like a pastor thing. If you have a problem with desiring the praise of men, you need to really, really look at yourself on that, okay? Like, you're not out there evangelizing some other person to impress some other Christian. Show me a verse. Okay, but what's the fourth wall? Okay, the third wall and the fourth wall in acting are kind of a combination of this, but the fourth wall is whenever somehow you're thinking about God, the person, the other people that are with you, and then you're thinking about the people who are watching it later. Okay? Now, I sometimes struggle, and I think about the fourth wall more than the first and the second wall, right? I'm just confessing. You know? I'm not actually talking to somebody, and I'm like, ooh, this is going to go great on social media, you know? But if I'm in control, if I'm submitted well, really, just I'm not trying to be prideful. I actually, when I'm doing good, I'm thinking about God, I'm thinking about the person, I'm thinking about the people that are with me, but I'm always constantly thinking, what does this look like to the watching world that isn't here? Like, there's the watching world, there's like two levels of the watching world. There's all the people walking by that aren't engaging you. What does it look like to them? And then there's the people who are watching on TikTok or YouTube or Facebook or whatever it is. What does what I'm doing look like to them? And that one's really difficult because you don't have a whole lot of control over it. Let me explain it. Sometimes what they're going to see is what your interaction is edited to be. Yeah. Because of that, you almost can't ever do anything that's more than a couple of seconds long wrong, which is really stressful. And I don't mean imperfect wrong, but like nasty wrong, right? So, for instance, I have a thing that I do. I don't do it now. I don't think anyone's seen it, but I used to do it, and someone called me on it. But I would like go into like other people's voices. I could do like I'd like make an affected voice or something like that, and then I'm thinking, well, in the context, people know that I'm not me. I'm quoting somebody else. You know? Y'all remember when Donald Trump did his weird thing or whatever that was? Like, he was like making fun of somebody. Do y'all remember that? Yeah. Well, yeah. Whatever he did. Well, it's like it's going to be clipped. I don't know the context on that. You know, I'm not a big Trump guy, so I don't really know the context of that. But like, if I'm out there and I'm doing something, and I'm talking to somebody, and I'm describing like, this is going to sound really brutal, but like, oh man, I can't think of any other. Just bear with me. Don't cry. You know, whenever you like have to put a dog to sleep, and they give them the shot, and then they kind of convulse and they go to sleep. It's an awful thing, losing a dog, right? Well, say I'm out on a college campus and I'm talking to somebody about the gospel, blah, blah, we're just shooting the breeze, and they're a dog lover and I'm a dog lover, and we're talking about dog lovers. And then I said, man, it was so terrible whenever we put our dog down, and she was like, film. T. Russell Hunter was on college campus making fun of retarded people. See what I'm saying? That's an extreme version of it, but you have to be mindful. What does this look like in a world where it can be clipped? Now, they can deep fake you, and there's nothing to do about that, but except for to like film everything. So people are always saying, why do you film everything? One, because the people who are opposed to us lie about everything we do. They're already doing it. I mean, there was like the Sasquatch sighting of Valley Sharping, you know. Like Bigfoot in Wichita, Kansas. And it's like somebody on Reddit, it's like, man, I was going to talk to him, but he just looks so dangerous. Well, the person sees this clip of you. I mean, you look like a lunatic. You're in shorts. So, fourth wall, fifth wall, what are you wearing? But which actually is considered, yeah, but shorts are okay. But anyway, so they put that up, and they just make you out to be this really, really mean guy, and they don't know you're like a teddy bear, right? And so being mindful of that. So I will address the fact that I'm talking to a person, to them, because I love them and I want to share the gospel with them, but that I know that it's being videoed, and that I know that other people are going to watch it. So sometimes literally, if I think I'm not getting anywhere with the conversation that I'm having, but that it actually becomes something that will be good for the million people who watch it online, I will shift in my mind to the people watching online are the first person. Does that make sense? Now, don't do that unless you do this a lot. I'm just being honest. If you think about what it's going to look like on video all the time, you're going to look at your footage at the end of the day and you're like, I got no good video. You know why? Because you didn't really actually talk to anyone, right? But if you're talking to actual people and you're actually letting God lead you and you're actually doing it for the right reasons, the best of your ability, and you think this will be good on video, you do that. Okay, so those are the 4 walls.